You open your eyes to a sound that doesn't belong to alarm clocks or bird song, but to the braying of a goat and the creak of a wooden cartwheel somewhere outside. It's barely dawn, but the sky is already the color of old linen, pale and dull, with a hint of dry heat waiting just behind the horizon. You slept on straw, laid over cracked stone. Your shoulder aches, your knees are stiff. A chicken pecks near your feet. Your tunic is wrinkled, itchy, and still damp with sweat from yesterday's sun. You do not own a second one. The scent of the room is a mixture of last night's stew, barley and something vaguely green, and the unmistakable smell of bodies, animals, and earth. Your family sleeps in the same room. Your parents, your younger brother, possibly a cousin who stayed the night. There is no privacy here, only bodies, breath, and a thin barrier between sleep and the responsibilities that begin before the sun even crests the city's tiled rooftops. You rise slowly. There are no mirrors, no fresh water waiting. You step outside and the world greets you not with beauty, but with dust. The kind that coats your teeth and settles in your eyebrows. You cough. A man down the street throws the contents of a chamber pot into a ditch. It doesn't go far. Your first task of the day isn't prayer or poetry. It's fetching water. You walk barefoot or with sandals so thin they may as well not exist, to the communal fountain. The stone is cold underfoot, but rough. You feel every pebble, every grain. You pass neighbors doing the same, eyes half-lidded with fatigue, nodding silently, too tired for greetings. At the fountain, there's already a queue. Someone argues about who arrived first. A woman slaps another with a ladle. You wait, patient but aching, and when it's your turn, you fill a clay jug that feels heavier than it should. Your arms burn before you reach the door again. Breakfast is not hot. There is no kitchen fire, only a wedge of barley bread, stale, rough, and cracking at the edges, and a handful of olives. One is shriveled, the other has a worm. You eat both anyway. You sip watered wine, the morning drink of those who can't trust their water. It tastes like wood and metal, but you're used to it. There is no time to rest. The agora waits. You make your way through the narrow streets of Athens, stepping aside for carts and dodging livestock. The air is filled with shouts, braying, and the metallic tang of hot bronze from nearby forges. Flies swarm near a fish stall that's been open too long. A man waves them away half-heartedly with a fan made of straw. The marketplace is a maze of uneven stalls, merchants shouting over each other, and citizens pushing through crowds with little regard for your aching feet or your aching everything. You stop to look at figs. They're overripe and soft. You consider bartering, but the merchant looks through you, uninterested in your offering of worn thread or a chipped cup. There are men, debating loudly at the edge of the agora. You recognize a few of the words, polis, virtue, logos, but the meaning is lost in the shouting. They quote Plato, or maybe Socrates, or maybe themselves. They speak with confidence and grease in their beards. You keep walking. A fight breaks out. A boy accused of stealing bread. He's maybe 10 years old. He runs. A sandal flies after him. He disappears down an alley. Your stomach growls again. You chew a leftover olive pit just to feel something in your mouth. The sun is climbing, hot now. Sweat runs down your back. Your tunic clings. And it's only mid-morning. Already, you're exhausted. Already, you want to lie down. But there's more work, more errands, more everything. You blink against the sun and try to remember what day it is. It doesn't matter. Every day here is the same. Every day is a test of your endurance. Every day begins with survival. And in ancient Greece, survival is the only luxury most people will ever know. The sun has passed its highest point now, but the heat is only just beginning to press down with its full weight. The streets feel narrower, the stones feel sharper, the shade feels shorter. Your errands have taken longer than expected, because they always do. You bartered half a day just to get half a loaf of bread, traded a neighbor's worn linen for a handful of lentils, and still couldn't find clean oil for your lamp. Everyone promises pure, but your nose knows better. And now you walk home, up a gentle slope that feels like a mountain when your legs are tired and your stomach is nearly empty. Along the way, a group of boys toss pebbles at a tied goat. A street singer strums a lyre with only 3 strings. An old woman sells what might be garlic or might be dried snakeskins. She insists they're medicinal. No one questions her. Superstition has more value than science here. You stop by the temple, not out of faith, but out of obligation. You light a bit of incense. It fizzles instead of burning. The smoke is thin, unsatisfying. You whisper a short prayer to whichever god is least likely to punish you today. You don't expect an answer. You haven't received one yet. When you reach your home, your feet are dusted red and gray. Your shoulders burn. You sit on a flat rock outside the doorway, because going inside means facing more work. Mending clothes, fetching wood, dealing with your cousin's bad temper and your sister's endless complaints about the goat again. So you linger here, watching the neighborhood shift into its afternoon rhythm. A boy chases a rooster. A man relieves himself in a corner, then covers it with dirt. 2 women argue over who used the communal mortar last and didn't clean it. It's all normal. And that's the strange thing. You expected grandeur. You grew up hearing about golden Athens, cradle of philosophy and democracy, where gods walk and heroes rise. And yet, most of your days are spent squinting into the sun, swatting flies, and trying to remember if the olive merchant still owes you 2 pits from last week. There are beautiful moments, yes. The way the breeze moves through hanging vines, the way light pools on stone at sunset, the smell of figs when they're fresh, but they're brief, and they vanish the moment you start to hope they'll last. Inside, your brother is trying to repair a broken amphora with wax. It's not working. Your mother is trying to stretch the lentils with wild herbs she found near the edge of the city wall. The fire is low. The pot is cracked. Someone spilled water, and no one has extra to clean it up. You sit on the floor and chew your bread slowly, not because you want to savor it, but because you're trying to convince your body that it's enough. It's not. You wash your hands in a basin shared by everyone, the water cloudy and warm. You wipe your hands on your tunic. They're not clean, just less dirty. When night falls, it comes quickly. The sun slips behind the hills, and shadows stretch like long fingers. Someone lights an oil lamp. The wick sputters. The room fills with low flickering light and the sound of someone snoring before they even lie down fully. You lie back on your straw mat. It pokes you in the ribs. You stare at the beams above, wondering if a mouse will walk across them tonight. It has before. Tomorrow, you'll wake before the light. Tomorrow, you'll walk to the fountain again. Barter again. Repeat everything. And no matter how much you try, You will still feel like a stranger in the very place they call civilization's beginning. Morning begins not with a smell of something warm or sweet, but with the absence of anything that might resemble comfort. No roasted grains, no fire-crackled bread, no honey melting over figs, just the stale scent of yesterday's meal clinging to the corner of your room like smoke that refuses to leave. It's the hour where light begins to rise, not suddenly, but slowly, like a reluctant god. The shadows pull away from the walls. The coals in the hearth have long since gone cold. You wake up hungry, but not surprised. Hunger is not an emergency here. It is a regular visitor, tapping gently behind your ribs, reminding you that life in ancient Greece begins on an empty stomach. There is bread left from the day before. You can see it, resting near the pottery shards that serve as your plates. It's cracked, hard, grayish-brown, not moldy yet, but not fresh either. It has the texture of something found in the corner of a dry attic, something that was once edible and still technically is. You break off a piece. It resists. You soak it in watered wine. The wine is sharp, sour, barely enough to soften the edge of the crust. You chew slowly, not because it's filling, but because it's all you have. Someone offers you an olive. You accept it like it's a gift. It is small and wrinkled, preserved in brine that clings to your fingertips. The pit is half the fruit. It tastes like salt and old sunlight. You swallow it whole. You remember stories from the symposiums, how the elite dine on cheese cured in fig leaves, lamb roasted over coals, honey cakes with saffron. You've never tasted those things. You've never even seen them. Your meals are not served, they are survived. Your neighbors eat similarly. A man 3 houses down is eating lentils mashed with garlic, the same way he did yesterday. He adds vinegar to cut the blandness, and you can smell it as you pass. Children chew barley paste from shallow bowls. An old woman has only water and onion peel. She pretends to chew for the sake of routine. There is no breakfast table. There is no breakfast hour. People eat when there is something to eat. Most days the line between morning and mid-afternoon is blurred by labor, by hunger, by the slow grind of survival. You've tried foraging once or twice, wild greens near the edge of town, bitter roots boiled into an indistinct gray sludge. It filled your stomach, but not your soul. It made you less hungry, but more aware of what you lacked. You dreamed that night of grapes, the size of eggs, of bread that steamed when you tore it open. Those dreams are dangerous. You trade with a neighbor, half a spool of thread for a handful of chickpeas. They are dry, uneven, chipped. You crush them with the base of a cup. You eat them raw. They split your teeth slightly, but you don't stop. You walk to the agora, not to buy, but to look. The fishmonger arranges his catch for the wealthy. Red mullet, gleaming and fresh, laid on damp cloths with sprigs of fennel. He ignores you. You watch a young boy steal a fig and run. The vendor curses him but doesn't chase. It's a familiar rhythm, one that repeats daily. You pass a baker's stall. The smell of hot bread stops your feet before your mind decides. The man behind the counter slaps the flatbread onto a wooden slab. A customer offers coin. You offer nothing. You move on. You once tried to make your own bread. The flour was coarse, the fire uneven. It came out black on one side and raw on the other. You still ate it. Later, you speak to a friend who claims he's heard of a land where people drink milk every day. Not goat's milk, but sweet milk from cows. Cold, thick, white. You nod as if that's possible, as if such a place could exist in this world. But you know it doesn't. Not here. Not now. Dinner in ancient Greece doesn't come with candles, warmth, or comfort. It arrives late, after the light has drained from the sky, and with it comes the same question you ask every evening. Will there be enough? Not what's for dinner, because that question implies options, but will there be anything at all? Tonight, you're lucky. There is lentil stew, or something that used to resemble it. The pot has been used for 5 days straight without washing, each batch absorbing the ghosts of the last. Bits of onion float among the grains. A sprig of herb, something bitter, is added not for flavor, but to disguise the absence of it. You stir the pot. It sticks. You scrape it off with the edge of a wooden spoon, splinters pressing into your palm. A fly hovers near the rim. You wave it away with the same hand you wipe across your forehead. The salt of your sweat mixes with the oil from the stew. You sit on a low stool, or maybe a stone. There's no ceremony, no table, no plates, just bowls, uneven, cracked. The stew is ladled out in turns, elders first, then children. If there's any left, you'll get a second scoop. You take a bite. The texture is gritty. One lentil hasn't cooked through. You bite down, and it crunches like sand. You keep eating. Your body no longer protests. It's grown used to the blandness, the repetition, the ache that never quite fades. Hunger has been with you so long, it no longer knocks. It lives inside you now. You once tasted cheese, real cheese, soft, goat's milk, wrapped in fresh leaves. It was during a wedding, or a festival, or perhaps a funeral. You don't remember the event. You remember the cheese. It was warm from the sun, tangy, alive. You haven't tasted anything like it since. Someone nearby is roasting fish. The smell drifts on the night air like a cruel memory. You breathe it in deeply, pretending it's your own dinner, pretending your bowl isn't half ash and boiled grain. You chew slower, not to savor, but to stretch. Some nights there's meat, but not for you. You've seen animals sacrificed at the temple, the priests slicing the choicest parts for themselves. You've seen nobles receive the roasted shoulder of a lamb, the flank of a piglet glazed in honey. You once got a burnt piece of bone. It splintered between your teeth. You swallowed anyway. The fire crackles. The shadows in the room dance across the walls like slow-moving hands. Your mother adds water to the pot to make it last another night. It tastes thinner now, less real. You drink it like broth, though it's barely flavored. There are moments of silence between slurps, moments when someone sighs or shifts, or murmurs something about the next harvest. You nod. You don't speak. Speaking wastes breath. Breath requires energy. Energy requires food. And food, in this world, is mostly hope disguised as sustenance. After the bowls are emptied and the pot scraped clean, you rinse your fingers in a shared bowl of water. It's murky. You dry your hands on your tunic. It leaves a mark. You lie down with a stone in your stomach where satisfaction should be. The gods are full. The rich are feasting. The poets write verses about abundance. But you? You dream of figs that don't rot, bread that doesn't break your teeth, and stew that doesn't lie to your tongue. You close your eyes. Your body is tired, but your hunger is always awake. You rise before the sun, not because you're devout, but because you're expected to be. Today is sacred, though in ancient Greece, nearly every day is sacred to someone. Or Something. There are more festivals than good meals, more rituals than rest. You don't even ask who the ceremony is for anymore. You simply assume it's a god who hasn't answered in a while. You join the slow, dusty walk to the temple courtyard. The air smells of burnt olive oil, old wool, and the faint iron of dried blood. A priest walks ahead of you in sandals that barely hold together, his robe stained from yesterday's rites. In one hand, he carries a bronze knife. In the other, a clay pot of barley for sprinkling. You carry nothing. You have nothing left to offer. Still, you show up. Everyone does. Not out of passion, but out of habit. Ritual wrapped in fear. You don't fear damnation. You fear being seen, not fearing it. The altar is stained black in places from years of fire and sacrifice. Cracks line its edges like lightning caught in stone. A goat bleats nearby, tethered by rope to a fig tree. Its eyes are wide, innocent, and unaware. You don't look at it long. Looking too long feels like taking responsibility. The priest begins to chant. The words are ancient, older than the city, older than memory. You mouth along, not understanding most of them, but mimicking the rhythm. Around you, others do the same. You hear a child coughing behind you. A woman clears her throat and adjusts her headscarf. A young man drops a coin into the offering bowl and mutters something about needing rain. Then comes the sacrifice. It's not dramatic. The priest has done this too many times. The goat is turned, its head lowered. The blade flashes, a thin spray. The sound is wet, quick, and forgotten. You bow your head. This is what it means to live here, to give and hope the gods notice. But they rarely do. You've prayed for warmth and received wind. You've begged for food and received silence. You've cried in the night and awoken to cold stone and older hunger. Still, you return, because there's no one else to ask. The priest smears blood on the altar, then sprinkles barley onto the fire. The smoke rises in twisting columns, gray and sluggish. He says it pleases the gods. You hope it pleases someone because it smells of damp ash and decay. When it's over, the wealthiest worshippers are given meat, the choicest parts, the belly, the thigh, the rich, fatty cuts that drip with juices. You stand at the edge of the courtyard and wait for the bones, the burnt edges, or whatever they toss to the dust. You pick at what you're given. It tastes of smoke, salt, and hunger. Nearby, someone claims they saw Apollo in a dream. Another says Athena warned them of illness. You nod, as if you too have heard whispers in the dark. But your dreams are silent. The only voice you hear is your own, asking questions into an indifferent sky. And the sky never answers. You've left figs at Hermes' shrine. You've poured wine on the ground for Dionysus. You've mumbled oaths to Poseidon near the sea, hoping he'll still your fear of deep water. But the gods don't visit you. They visit heroes. They walk beside kings. They speak in riddles to oracles wrapped in gold and incense. You? You clean your hands with sand and call that holy. When you leave the temple, you do not feel lighter. You feel the same, maybe worse, because now you've given part of yourself, time, hope, breath, and received only the echo of ritual. The goat is gone. The smoke remains. And so does your silence. You pass temples not like a tourist, but like someone walking past an old debt. They loom overhead, columns too large to be anything but symbols. The marble shines in sunlight, but not for you. The carvings on the pediments, heroes, gods, beasts, are stories meant to impress. But they don't feed you. They don't answer. They don't move. Each time you walk past them, you look up, not in reverence, but out of habit. You're not sure when you stopped believing. Maybe it was after your father's crops failed 3 seasons in a row. Maybe it was when the priest took your only coin and said the gods would provide. They didn't. You've heard people say faith is a comfort, but here it's a burden. You are expected to give, always give. Sacrifice your goat, your grain, your breath, your belief. You've lit candles until the wax ran out. You've knelt on stone until your knees bled. You've whispered prayers into statues that stared past you. Nothing changes. The gods do not answer. And that silence begins to echo so loud you hear it in your sleep. You remember when your brother got sick. The fever came in the night, and you went to the shrine. You lit incense. You left wine. You promised offerings you couldn't afford. You begged, and still he died. The priest told you it was the will of Apollo. You wondered if Apollo had ever heard your name. Now, when people tell you of visions or dreams, you listen politely. They say Artemis guided them, or Hermes sent them a sign. You nod, you smile, you keep your questions to yourself, but they are still there. Every night when the oil lamp flickers and the walls breathe cold, you ask them in your mind, where were you? Why do you only speak to the rich? Why do your temples stand while our roofs collapse? You pray with others during festivals, but your voice is hollow. You repeat the chants. You bow at the right time, but your faith is no longer in the gods. It's in the repetition, in the hope that if you act like everyone else, maybe you'll be spared. Spared what? You don't know. Punishment, poverty, loneliness? The gods here are like the sky, vast, high, unreachable. They are thunder without rain. They are stories painted on urns and told by people who haven't missed a meal. They are names to whisper before bed, not because you believe, but because you're afraid not to. And that fear is ancient. It lives in every prayer, every libation, every sacrificial cut. It walks beside you when you pass the statues, and it whispers that maybe belief is not about truth. Maybe it's just a shield against the idea that no one is watching at all. The sun in ancient Greece is not kind. It does not rise gently or give warmth in moderation. It arrives like a conqueror, absolute and unforgiving. There's no breeze in the morning, only stillness. The kind of stillness that makes the air feel thick, like invisible syrup weighing down your chest. You don't open your door because you want to greet the day. You open it because you have no choice. Work must be done. Fields don't wait for comfort. The ground outside is already warm. By midday it will burn. Sand sticks to your skin. Your clothes cling. There is no escape. Shade is rare, and when you find it, it feels like a stolen privilege. You crouch beside a wall or crawl under olive branches. But even the shadows are hot. The sun seeps into stone, into soil, into bones. You carry water in a clay jar that leaks slightly. It was cracked last summer. No one could afford a new one. You patch it with wax, but the wax melts. You take small sips. You feel the dryness in your mouth long before you feel thirst. You sweat more than you can afford to lose. By mid-morning, your tunic is soaked, not from water, but from effort. The salt stings the corners of your eyes. Your hands are red, your neck darkened from months without cover. You remember when your skin was a lighter shade. Now, it's a record of the heat, a map of burns, blisters, healing, and more burns. You walk past a well. The bucket is stuck. You curse under your breath. The rope creaks but doesn't rise. Someone else will deal with it, not you. You keep walking. Your sandals slap the dry earth like they're trying to beat a drum, but there is no music here, only dust and heat. Someone says this is a blessed land, fertile, chosen. You look around and see nothing but cracked fields and grass burnt to memory. The grapes might grow, but only because they're too stubborn to die. The olives twist on branches like clenched fists. The wheat bends because it's too weak to resist. You know that no matter how early you wake, the sun will catch you. There is no hour it respects, no worker it spares. Even the animals pant in the shade, tongues out, eyes half shut. A dog lies near the cistern. It doesn't lift its head when you pass. Its breath comes in short bursts, as if it's trying not to exist too loudly. Inside your home, it's no better. The walls trap the heat. The roof leaks light through broken thatch. You try to lie still on the floor, but the floor is warm too. You splash your face with water. It dries before it drips. You wish for rain, not because the crops need it, but because you need to remember what cool feels like. You think of the myths, of Helios dragging the sun across the sky in his chariot. You wonder if anyone ever asked him to slow down, or stop, or just go around you for once. But the gods don't listen to peasants. They never have. And so the heat remains, a silent master, a constant punishment. A reminder that in this world the sky is always winning. By afternoon, the heat doesn't just press against your skin, it seeps into your thoughts. You forget what coolness feels like. You forget what it means to breathe without dust. Every breath tastes like ash. The wind picks up, but it's not a relief. It's worse. It moves like a furnace blast, carrying sand and heat and smoke from someone else's fire. You wrap a cloth around your mouth. It barely helps. The air scratches your throat. Your ears ring. You think of rivers you've only heard about, cool water running between green banks, and wonder if they ever truly existed. Here, in this village, water comes from cracked clay jars and smells faintly of the ground it came through. The sun is overhead now, and the world has shrunk. There are no distant hills, just glare. Light bounces off every surface, white walls, bare stone, dry fields. You squint constantly. Your eyes ache. You blink hard and see after images. You try not to look too far, not because of danger, but because the light feels like punishment. The animals hide. Even the insects are quiet. No cicadas today, not because it's too hot for them, but because it's too hot even for their songs. Your father once told you to walk slowly in this kind of heat. The faster you move, he said, the faster the heat finds your heart. You didn't believe him until the first time you fainted. Now, every step feels calculated, not toward something, just away from collapse. At midday, work stops, not officially, but by shared, silent agreement. People retreat indoors or under whatever shade they can find. You do the same. Your home is no sanctuary. The air inside is stale. The walls breathe heat. There's no cross breeze, only stillness. You lie down on your mat and try not to move. You think of cold wine, though you've never had it. You think of ice, though you've never seen it. You think of places where roofs drip water from snow, where people curse winter instead of sun. Someone in the next house pours water over their head. You hear the splash, the gasp, the silence after. You wish it were you, but you must ration your water. What you drink today, you may need more tomorrow. The clay beneath you is warm. The air presses like cloth soaked in steam. You close your eyes. You imagine being underground, deep in a cave where no sun reaches. But then you remember Hades, and how even that realm burns with its own kind of fire. There is no relief in myth, only metaphors for how hot your real life feels. When you finally drift into sleep, it's not restful. It's the kind of sleep that punishes the body while numbing the mind. Dreams come slow, thick, heavy with orange skies and blistered earth. You wake before sundown, not because you're rested, but because the heat has soaked your mat. Your back is damp. Your hair sticks to your face. The sun is lower, but not gone. The light now stretches long across the floor, red and unforgiving. You sit up, dizzy. There's still more day left, still more heat to endure, still more breath to ration, still more of the fire to survive. Nightfall in ancient Greece does not promise rest. It promises a different kind of weight. The sun disappears behind the hills, leaving behind air that is still hot, still thick, still unmoving. There is no cool breeze, only the absence of direct light. You step outside hoping for relief and find none. The dust, still warm from the day, rises with every step. Your home, made of clay and stone, holds the day's heat like a clay oven. You leave the door open to invite the air in, but it doesn't come. Inside, the walls sweat. The floor radiates a low hum of warmth. There is no such thing as freshness, only degrees of stale. You lie on a thin mat, more symbolic than supportive. It cushions nothing. Your back touches the ground. Your ribs touch your skin. You shift constantly, trying to find a position where bone does not press against bone. But the ground doesn't change. Only your discomfort rotates. Outside, dogs bark at nothing. Someone coughs. A child wails and is quickly hushed. The village is never truly quiet. It breathes in low, irregular rhythms, restless like its people. Somewhere in the distance, a drunk man sings badly about Helen and her 1,000 ships. No one tells him to stop. Your eyes adjust to the darkness slowly. The roof above is a patchwork of reed and shadow. Stars peek through tiny holes. You count them, not out of wonder, but to keep your mind from drifting to the things that make you anxious. Food, debt, sickness, gods. Sleep doesn't come easily. You're not alone in this. You hear shifting bodies from neighboring houses, murmured conversations, rustling, the creak of a wooden frame, someone's prayer whispered into a clay wall. You try to focus on your breath. In, outside, in, outside. But each inhale reminds you of how dry your throat is. Each exhale makes you more aware of the stillness. You close your eyes tighter, as if that will force dreams into existence. It doesn't. You wonder if you've forgotten how to sleep. You remember when you were a child, when sleep came like a curtain, a full stop. Now it's a thin veil, never opaque, always fluttering. The night air thickens around you like damp linen. Every movement feels exaggerated. A roll to one side sends waves of warmth through the mat. You sit up, hoping upright is better. It isn't. You go outside. The moon is small tonight, a shard in a cloudy sky. You sit on a stone step, feel it cool beneath your thighs. You listen. You count how many types of sounds you can hear. A frog near the well, 2 dogs in competition, someone snoring softly. You breathe slower, not because you're relaxed, but because you're too tired to be tense. You consider sleep a task now, a ritual. You lie back down and try again. Another hour passes. You don't sleep. You simply drift into stillness and hope it counts. The ancients believed dreams came from the gods. From the land of sleep, Hypnos would send them, escorted by his brother Thanatos, who ruled over death. But your dreams are not divine. They are fragments, disjointed images, memories, and the echoes of voices you can't name. And when they come late, like a guest who's already missed the feast. You wake before dawn not because you're rested, but because you're expected. No rooster crows for you. Your own body is the alarm. Your back aches. Your neck is stiff. The mat has shifted under you during the night, and your limbs feel like they've aged 10 years in 5 hours. You rub your eyes and feel the crust of dust and sweat. You sit up slowly. Your joints pop. Your legs resist. But there's no time to honor the pain. The village stirs, not with joy, but with resignation. You hear others waken, too. Wooden doors scraping against dirt, buckets being lifted, someone retching softly in the distance. Another day, another task, another chance to be exhausted again by the time the stars return. The fire is dead. You don't relight it yet. The air is already too warm, even before sunrise. You chew a piece of dried bread. You swallow hard. It scrapes going down. There is no drink to soften it. You move your jaw to keep from clenching. Your neighbor limps out of her home and nods at you. No words, just the mutual understanding that last night was, like all nights, insufficient. Sleep, you realize, is a luxury of the well-fed. They have the cushions, the thick walls, the quiet courtyards. They burn scented oil to chase away insects. They have slaves to fan them through the hottest months. They do not wake with backs soaked in their own sweat or bellies still grumbling from half meals. You are not angry. You are too tired to be angry. You walk to the well, hoping the rope is fixed. It isn't. You do what you can. You splash a little water on your face and let it drip into your collarbone. The chill lasts seconds. Then the warmth creeps back. People say dreams can be interpreted, that they hold messages, warnings, portents. You wonder what it means when your only dreams are of work, when you dream of carrying firewood or weaving baskets, only to wake up and do the same. Maybe the gods don't visit the poor in dreams because they're already watching us while we're awake. You sweep the dust from your doorstep. It returns in the next breeze. You look up. The sun is almost back, a golden edge slicing the black horizon. You close your eyes again, not to sleep, but to steal a moment of stillness, a moment where you're not expected to carry, dig, grind, or serve. But even that moment ends. The heat arrives again. The day begins again. And sleep, like the gods, remains distant. Food is supposed to comfort. It is meant to nourish, to bring families together, to mark the passing of seasons and celebrations. But in your world, food is often a source of quiet humiliation. Every meal is a reminder of what you don't have, of what you can't afford, of how much your body needs and how little it receives. Breakfast is not a feast. It's survival. A piece of barley bread, rough and dry. You chew slowly, not because you savor it, but because rushing would waste its only benefit. Time spent not feeling hungry. You dip the bread in olive oil, but it's nearly gone. The jar's bottom is shiny with residue. You scrape with your finger, ashamed even in solitude. The oil is bitter. It burns your throat a little, but it coats the bread just enough to trick your mouth into thinking this is flavor. Sometimes there are olives, usually the wrinkled kind, salty to the point of punishment. Other times, a bit of goat cheese if the animal hasn't gone dry. You slice it thin, too thin, but every crumble is a luxury. You've seen what the wealthy eat. honey cakes, roasted meats, bowls of figs and grapes so full they spill over. You've smelled the spices, cinnamon, saffron, cumin, carried through the streets like taunts. You've watched their servants toss away leftovers that would be a banquet in your home. Lunch is worse. You're already exhausted. You've worked since before sunrise. Your hands shake, your shoulders burn, but the meal is light. Lentil stew if you're lucky. If not, another piece of bread, a boiled onion, a strip of dried fish so salty you drink twice as much water to endure it. There are no plates, just shared bowls and fingers. Sometimes a wooden spoon passed between mouths. Cleanliness is not a luxury you get to worry about. The dirt on your hands mixes with the food. You taste it. You swallow anyway. You remember stories told by travelers of lands with golden apples, of rivers filled with wine, of eternal feasts where no one hungers. You used to believe them. Now they feel like cruel jokes, or worse, stories made by people who have never missed a meal in their life. Dinner is the hardest. Your body wants rest. Your stomach disagrees. There's rarely enough for a full serving. You divide a fig into quarters. You thin out wine with water, more water than wine, until it tastes like regret. Sometimes, when you have guests, you pretend you're full. You serve them first. You smile. You talk. Then you clean up quietly, nibbling on scraps when no one's looking. You've learned not to expect variety. You've learned to be thankful when there's enough. And you've learned the difference between being hungry and being starving. Being hungry makes you tired. Being starving makes you quiet. There are festivals, of course, times when food appears in piles, laughter grows loud, and smells rise like hymns to the gods. But even then, you're not at the center. You're on the edge, watching, waiting for what's left. At harvest celebrations, the wealthiest bring gifts to the temple, jugs of wine, fresh bread, slaughtered animals still steaming. You and your neighbors stand behind ropes or walls, or in the shadows of pillars. You don't taste the first cuts. You're lucky if you get bones to boil the next day. When the priests bless the food, they hold it aloft like it belongs to everyone. But everyone knows who it's really for. You bow your head, not out of reverence, but because your stomach is louder than your pride. The rich eat differently, not just better ingredients, but in better order. Appetizers, main dishes, sweets. They sit on cushions and pick at roasted duck, dipping it into sauces you've never even smelled. They discuss politics, poetry, philosophy, on full stomachs. You eat to survive. They eat to think. There's no shame in hunger here, only repetition. You're always chasing fullness, but rarely catch it. On days when there's enough, you eat quickly before someone asks to share. On days when there isn't, you chew slower, trying to make it last. Neither method works. Children cry from hunger often. At first, it breaks your heart. Eventually, it becomes background noise, a rhythm. You learn which cries mean desperation and which mean habit. You once tried to grow your own vegetables. The soil was dry, the sun too cruel. The goats got into the garden and ate the leaves before they sprouted. You laughed bitterly, then cried when no one saw. Some families sell what little food they have just to buy a piece of meat on festival days, to feel, even for one meal, what it's like to eat like a citizen, not a servant. You've learned tricks. Fill your stomach with water before meals. Swallow olive pits to trick your body into thinking it's had more. Chew mint leaves to mask the lack of real flavor. Pretend you're fasting on purpose when visitors come. And sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet and the mat is hard beneath your body, you dream of bread. Fresh, soft, warm. The kind that tears apart in your hands and fills your lungs with scent before it ever touches your lips. You wake with that taste in your mouth, even though it's never truly been there. It's strange how hunger can create memory from nothing. You sit up in the darkness, stomach tight, mouth dry, heart full of a feast you never had. And that's when you realize even dreams can be cruel. You don't remember when the pain started. It was never sudden. It didn't come like a broken bone or a cut from a blade. It arrived slowly, like a tide rising beneath your skin. One day you woke up and noticed your back didn't stretch all the way. The next, your fingers couldn't close fully around the handle of a tool. Then it became normal. Work isn't something you do. It's something you survive. You wake before the sun because daylight isn't a luxury. It's a deadline. You work until the light disappears, and even after if there's firewood to spare. You carry, lift, scrub, haul, dig, twist, stack, pound, sew, stir, climb, drag, over and over. There are no breaks, not real ones. A pause for water is a luxury. A moment in the shade is a sin if someone else is watching. You hide your exhaustion behind your jaw. You nod instead of complain. You move instead of rest. Children learn early, not letters or poetry, but tasks. A girl learns to knead dough before she's tall enough to see over the table. A boy learns to carry kindling while his feet still slip on stones. Play is a stolen moment between chores, and even then, it's a lesson in hiding. You don't have one job, you have all of them. Field work during the day, mending in the evening, feeding animals, collecting water, patching roofs, grinding grain, cleaning ashes. You do what needs doing because no one else will, and if you don't, no one eats. Your hands tell the story of your life. Calluses like bark, cracks like riverbeds in drought, nails that split, fingers that tremble when still too long. You sometimes stare at them and wonder if they even belong to you. They look older than your face. You used to measure days by the gods, market days, rest days, feast days. Now you measure by pain, the day your shoulder gave out, the day your knee collapsed, the day you couldn't grip a rope tight enough and dropped a basket of firewood on your foot. That day bled. No one has time to feel sorry, not even you. You see your reflection in a basin and realize your spine no longer straightens. You stoop now, not from age, but from memory. Your muscles remember every motion, and so they settle there, bowed like wheat under wind. You used to dream of being a sailor, a builder, a singer. Now you just dream of standing still without something to carry, of silence without a chore hanging behind it. You wonder how long this will last, how much more your body can hold. Then someone calls your name, and you get up, because rest is not for you, not yet. You were never praised for working hard, only punished when you didn't. That's how it worked. Sweat was invisible, only mistakes were seen. You could carry twice your weight, but no one noticed until you dropped it. And even then, not with pity, just disapproval. The men talk about honor, but their backs are twisted, their knees wrapped in dirty cloth. Their hands shake when they raise cups. Their teeth are yellow, their eyes hollow. They call it pride, but really, it's just endurance wearing a mask. You work with your mother, your father, your siblings. Everyone does something, even the oldest among you. There is no retirement, no soft years at the end, only slower motion, fewer tasks, and a quiet acceptance that one day the body will simply stop. You saw it happen once. A man bent down to tie a rope and didn't get back up. No one screamed. They just laid him flat and closed his eyes. Then someone else took his place. That's how things are. Even when there's laughter, it's tired. You laugh while peeling vegetables or stitching clothes, not because something's funny, but because your body needs release. You smile when your child tries to lift a tool too heavy, because you know one day it won't be. At night your dreams are filled with chores. You sweep floors that never get cleaned. You carry baskets that never empty. Even asleep your muscles ache. You wake up sorer than when you closed your eyes. No one asks how you feel. The question doesn't exist here. Only, have you finished? Or, did you bring the water? Or, why is this still undone? You carry shame like a second cloak. For the days you were too slow, for the times you forgot, for the moments you pretended not to hear someone call your name, you whisper apologies into the dirt while you plant. You tell the wind you'll do better. You hope someone hears, but no one does, because everyone else is whispering too. There is no ceremony for labor here, no statues for the ones who dig or wash or mend, just worn shoes, patched clothes, and backs that bow further each year. You don't resent it anymore. Resentment takes energy, and you need every breath. Sometimes when the sky is purple and the day finally dies, you stare at your hands again. They don't look strong, but they keep moving. They haven't stopped. They won't, because this is who you are now, not the dreams you had, not the voice you used to raise, not the boy or girl who wanted to be a hero. Just hands, just motion, just work. Every road in ancient Greece promises more than it gives. From a distance they look like invitations, narrow ribbons threading between hills and olive groves, winding toward temples, towns, or trade. But when your feet touch them, they betray you, because these roads were not made for comfort, not for people like you. They're made of stone and packed earth, uneven and hot. Your sandals, worn thin and patched too many times, offer no protection. Every step feels like a negotiation between skin and rock. Pebbles slip beneath your feet, pressing into your soles. Dust clouds rise with every step, coating your ankles, drying your throat, turning your tongue to chalk. You walk because you must. The market is 2 hours away. The well is 1. The temple even farther. Every journey is long. Every task begins with walking and ends with limping. You pass the same sights every day: crumbling walls, thorn bushes, dry stream beds, and goats that bleat like old men. You know each tree like a neighbor. You've named the ones that give shade. You resent the ones that don't. When it rains, the roads become rivers. When it's dry, they crack like burnt bread. Your feet learn to adjust, to slide rather than land. You grow calluses, you lose nails. You ignore the pain because stopping is not an option. The rich travel differently. They have litters carried by slaves, wagons with thick wheels, horses if they're truly powerful. You, meanwhile, have legs. That's it. Legs and a thin cloth to wrap your head against the sun. You sometimes wonder what's at the end of these roads, beyond the town, beyond the sea, beyond the mountains. But wonder is dangerous. It leads to longing, and longing leads to mistakes. You once heard a merchant say, "The road is freedom." You laughed quietly. For you, the road is obligation, It takes from your time, your body, your will. Every journey is a toll. At midday, the stones burn. You step carefully, shifting weight from heel to toe, counting your steps to distract from the sting. You pass travelers who don't meet your eyes. Everyone is focused on their destination, on their burden. No one offers water. No one asks how far you've come. Sometimes you walk in silence. Other times you sing low, broken songs you learned from your mother. Songs about ships, about gods, about home. They don't make the road shorter, but they make it feel less empty. And always, at the back of your mind, there's fear. Bandits, stray dogs, illness. A twisted ankle could mean death if no one finds you, and no one usually does, so you keep walking. Carefully, quietly, and you learn not to expect the road to offer anything more than dust. The road never gets easier. You simply forget what comfort feels like. After a while, blisters become background noise. You stop flinching when the strap of your sandal cuts into your skin. You walk through the ache, past it, until your legs become machines, moving, not feeling. Travel isn't adventure for you. It's necessity. You walk to trade. You walk to deliver. You walk to beg. And with every journey, the same thoughts follow you like shadows. Will I return before nightfall? Will the market still have eggs? Will someone steal what I carry? Sometimes you carry goods. Sometimes messages. Sometimes, if the gods are kind, a few coins wrapped in cloth and hidden close to your chest. You walk differently when you carry money. Slower, quieter. You take longer paths through hills and avoid open stretches. Eyes are everywhere. Even friendly ones can change when gold is involved. You once heard a story about a woman who walked to Delphi for a prophecy. She never came back. Some say the gods claimed her. Others say men did. Either way, you learn the lesson. Some destinations aren't worth the road. In summer, the heat is merciless. The stone beneath your feet cooks your bones from the bottom up. You feel your heart beat in your temples. Your mouth tastes like iron. You carry a wineskin, but it's rarely full. The water gets warm after the first hour. You sip it anyway. What else can you do? In winter, it's worse. The roads are slick with mud or frozen solid. The cold eats through your clothes, into your joints. Your toes go numb. Your fingers stiffen around whatever you're carrying. You keep moving so you don't freeze. But even motion feels like drowning in stone. Sometimes when you return home late, long after the sun has vanished, you can't remember the way you came. The stones blur together. Your feet find the path without you. Your mind drifts elsewhere, to fire, to bread, to the face of someone waiting for you. If you're lucky. But not every traveler is expected. Some walk all day only to find empty homes. Some arrive to bad news, to illness, to funerals. You've seen it in their faces, the way their shoulders collapse not from fatigue, but from knowing the road brought them somewhere they never wanted to be. And yet the next day they walk again. So do you, because the road doesn't care, because standing still is never an option, because even betrayal becomes routine, because your legs don't need permission anymore. They just move. The temple sits on a hill above your village. From afar it looks powerful. Marble columns, sunlit steps, banners that flutter like divine fabric. But the closer you get, the more it feels like a wall, not a doorway, not a welcome. You climb the hill barefoot. That's the rule. You carry your offerings in both hands, a jar of oil, a bundle of herbs, a handful of coins so thin they barely carry weight. You walk slowly, not out of reverence, but because your knees ache and the stone is sharp. Inside the temple, it's quiet, not peaceful, just silent in that thick, suffocating way, like being underwater. You feel watched but not seen, known but not cared for. The statues of the gods tower above you, unblinking, perfect, cold. You kneel, you bow your head, you whisper your prayer. It is not poetic. You ask for rain because the fields are cracked. You ask for healing because your daughter won't stop coughing. You ask for mercy because you don't know what else to ask. Your voice feels small in that vast stone space. You look up at Athena or Apollo or Demeter and wonder if their eyes were ever meant to look this far down. You place your offerings at the altar. You light a bit of incense. It burns too fast. The smoke rises like a question without an answer. You wait, but nothing changes. No thunder, no warmth, no sign. Just the rustle of a priest's sandals in the shadows. Just the cough of someone else waiting in line behind you. You rise slowly. Your knees crack. Your palms burn from pressing into the stone floor. You leave the temple the way you came, unchanged. The wind is dry. The sky is the same color it was when you arrived. The ache in your back is worse, and still you return next week, because not praying feels worse. You've heard stories of miracles. A boy cured of blindness. A drought ended overnight. A woman spared from plague after leaving an offering of doves. You want to believe. You try. But belief is heavier when it has to carry hunger, sickness, and silence. You've learned to lower your expectations. You no longer hope for intervention. You ask only that things don't get worse. Your gods don't speak. But neither do you. You simply keep showing up, because devotion for the poor is often just persistence. You once watched a wealthier man bring a goat to the temple, fat, well-fed, draped in a garland of flowers. The priests took it eagerly. They spoke blessings over him. They poured wine. They chanted in voices that echoed. The man smiled. He left with confidence in his eyes. You brought eggs that week. They weren't even fresh. One cracked on the climb up the hill. You wrapped it in cloth and prayed no one would notice the smell. The priest didn't look at you. He took the eggs and waved you past without a word. You didn't ask for much. Just that your sister's fever would break. It didn't. So you came again the next week, this time with a small loaf, then some dried figs, then a ribbon from your daughter's hair. You began offering things not because they had value, but because they cost you something. That's how you know it's real. Sacrifice is meaningless when it's easy. At night, you pray again. Not in the temple, but at home, beside the oil lamp. You whisper to the goddess of the hearth, hoping she hears you over the crying. You ask the God of healing to visit your neighbor's house instead of yours. You don't even mind if they skip your name. You just want the dying to slow down. You begin to see signs in ordinary things. A breeze during stillness, a crow landing on a roof, the shape of smoke from a fire. You assign meaning because the gods won't speak for themselves. Someone has to fill the silence. You've learned to read omens where there are none. It gives the day shape. It gives the suffering rhythm. A sick man in your village once screamed at the sky, cursed the gods, broke his shrine. People avoided his house after that, not because they feared him, but because they feared his honesty. You understand that now. You've felt the heat of that same rage, but you keep it buried, because if the gods aren't listening, who's left? And if you stop believing, Who will carry the prayers for those who still do? So you offer, and wait, and walk the same dusty path up the hill with empty hands and heavy hopes. You kneel again, you whisper again, and though you hear nothing, you still believe they heard you. The wind changed before the sky did. You felt it in your bones, in the way the goats cried out too early, in the way the olive trees swayed without rhythm. Something was wrong, not the usual wrong of hunger or fever, but something larger, something the earth itself seemed to know before you did. The sky followed next, gray, then green, then a strange yellow that turned shadows into ghosts. You watched from the doorway as dust lifted in spirals, as if the ground was exhaling all at once. You'd seen storms before, rain that soaked through roofs, winds that knocked over pots. But this was different. It didn't arrive. It swallowed. The first gust knocked a child over. The second tore tiles from roofs. You screamed, but your voice vanished in the roar. The trees bent lower than you thought possible. Then one cracked, loud, like bone under pressure. Then another. You grabbed what you could, a sack of grain, a blanket, your sister's hand. You ran for the storeroom, not because it was strong, but because it had no windows. Inside, the world went dark. Wind screamed through every crack. Dust filled your lungs. You prayed, not words, just desperate, jumbled thoughts. Let it end. Let it end. Let it end. The storm didn't care. It pulled doors from hinges. It smashed pots against walls. It tore through fields and fences like they were paper. Livestock vanished. Shouts became sobs. You held your breath longer than you thought possible. And still, it raged. You didn't know how long it lasted. Minutes, hours. It felt like days. Time became noise. Every second, another crack, another crash, another scream. And then, silence. The kind that rings. The kind that makes your ears feel hollow. You emerged slowly, covered in dust, shaking, alive. But your village wasn't. Roofs gone. Walls collapsed. The well had caved in. The olive grove was flattened, the trees broken like twigs in a child's hand. And the people? Some cried. Some stood still, too shocked to speak. Some dug with bare hands through rubble, calling out names that would never answer again. You joined them, because what else was there to do? You didn't sleep that night. No one did. The wind had died, but inside your chest something still howled. You sat among strangers and family alike, all wrapped in the same torn blankets, all staring into the same fire that barely held together. You counted the ones who were missing, quietly, using fingers beneath the blanket so no one could see. Every name brought back a memory, a laugh, a favor given, a debt forgotten. Grief moved slowly, not in tears, but in silence. People walked through rubble like ghosts, lifting beams, gathering what was left of their lives into baskets, a cracked cup, a half-burnt sandal, a necklace still warm from someone's neck. There was no temple left to pray in. It had collapsed. Marble shattered like clay, the gods broken at the feet of their own altars. The statue of Hermes lay face down in the dirt. No one tried to lift it. The well had filled with debris. Water would have to come from somewhere else. You didn't know where yet. The olive trees were gone. Even the oldest one, the one generations had grown beside, split down the center, its trunk gaping like a wound. People asked questions, but no one had answers. Where will we sleep? What will we eat? Will they send help from the city? Did the gods do this? You said nothing, because deep down you already knew. There was no help coming. The storm wasn't a message. It wasn't punishment. It was just life, harsh and random and final. And still, you moved. You started rebuilding. Not because you believed it would last, but because you didn't know how to stop. You found some wood. You tied it with rope. You fixed a roof badly, but at least it kept the sun out. You shared your grain. You buried the dead. You comforted the living. And when the wind picked up days later, even slightly, everyone froze. Eyes searched the sky, feet tensed, ready to run. But the storm didn't return. Not yet. You sat that night outside what was once your home. The stars were clearer than you remembered. The silence, too. A kind of clarity in the wreckage. You closed your eyes, and for a moment, just one, you believed you could begin again. You once believed water was pure. Everyone did. Water was a gift, a blessing, a thing the gods themselves poured from mountains and clouds. It shimmered in rivers. It trickled from stone basins in the city. It filled your jars and rinsed your face. It seemed clean, until it wasn't. You learned that lesson slowly, and then all at once. The first time, it was a child. He drank from a stream near the footpath. The water sparkled in the sun. It ran over smooth rocks. Birds flew above it. A perfect place. He smiled after drinking. Later that night, he vomited until there was nothing left to bring up. His belly swelled. His skin turned gray. By morning he was gone. No one blamed the water, not then. A priest said it was punishment. A neighbor said it was demons. Someone blamed figs. But it happened again and again. And suddenly, no stream was safe. You were taught how to collect water from the top of a stream, not the bottom. How to avoid still water. How to cover jars with cloth. How to boil, if you had fuel. Most didn't. The well in your village was deep, but not deep enough. When animals died nearby, the water changed taste. Slightly. Just enough to warn you, if you were paying attention. But thirst didn't care about flavor. And so, you drank. Sometimes nothing happened. Sometimes your stomach twisted for days. You curled on straw mats, clutching your ribs, breathing in shallow gasps. You whispered prayers to Asclepius and hoped it was just a passing shadow. Other times, it spread. One sick became 3, then 8, then too many to name. You heard the coughs in the night like a chorus. The buckets stopped coming from the well. No one wanted to be near it. People whispered the word plague, and always. Water was the suspect no one could arrest. You watched neighbors dig new wells, desperate and tired. You watched women carry jars from miles away, their backs bent, their arms raw. You watched mothers mix wine with water, hoping the gods had mercy on diluted poison. And still, you drank, because not drinking was faster death. You learned to fear what looked beautiful, to question every drop, to see danger in the shimmer. Clear didn't mean clean, and thirst made liars of you all. When the drought came, the wells became pits of fear. You approached them like you would a grave, slowly, carefully, without speaking. Each time you lowered the bucket, you listened for the splash. Sometimes it came. Sometimes it didn't. When it didn't, you felt it in your throat first. A tightening. A silence behind your ribs. The village divided into those who had water and those who asked for it. The difference wasn't wealth, it was luck. Those whose wells held on longer became accidental kings, but they knew the water would run out soon, and when it did, generosity would dry up with it. You saw people fight over a single jug, not scream. Fight. Silent, teeth-gritting desperation. One woman threw stones, another pulled hair. A child was knocked down and forgotten. You looked away. You carried your bucket at dawn or dusk to avoid being seen. The fewer people who knew you had water, the better. You shared with your family, of course, and maybe one neighbor. But even that felt dangerous. Some tried digging new wells. Most failed. The ground was too dry, or the water came up tainted, thick, metallic, bitter. Still, they drank it. You all did, because the sun didn't wait for purification. Once a traveling healer came through and offered advice. Boil it longer, he said. Add ash from olive wood. Stir with silver if you have it. Most had nothing. So they just prayed harder. The irony wasn't lost on you, how something so vital could kill so quietly. Not with a sword, but with a sip. Children cried not from pain, but from confusion. They didn't understand why water, the thing they were told was life, now brought only sickness. They begged for it and then threw it up. You stopped trusting your thirst. It lied to you, told you to drink when you knew better, told you to hope when you shouldn't. Even rain stopped feeling like rescue. It came too fast, too hard, washing filth into barrels, stirring up the rot in gutters. You saw people rush out with pots, only to catch more dirt than blessing. Still, you drank. You had to. And in every swallow you tasted the gamble. You prayed with every sip. And if the gods were watching, they stayed silent. It began with a sound you didn't recognize. Not thunder, not wind. A crack, sharp and rising, like laughter made of wood. You turned your head toward the hills and saw the sky glowing, but not with sun, not with any light you trusted. Someone shouted, "Fire!" But the word came too late. The flames were already running, not creeping, running. You had seen small fires before, a cooking pot tipped over, a hearth left unattended. Those were fires that could be fought, fires that listened to buckets and wet cloth. This one didn't. The wind fed it. The dry leaves welcomed it. The olive branches, brittle from heat, became fuses. You saw birds fleeing ahead of it, silent and fast. That was your first real warning, when nature stopped making noise. People panicked. Some ran toward the fire, trying to save goats, carts, homes. Others ran away, with whatever they could grab, blankets, babies, bread. The village bell rang wildly, but no one listened anymore. Sound had no power over fire. You grabbed your father's staff, your brother's sandals, and your mother's prayer beads, that's all. You didn't think. You moved. The smoke came faster than the flames. It stung your eyes, burned your throat, made the world swim. You stumbled, not knowing if you were running towards safety or just another patch of fuel. Flames jumped, over paths, over walls, over reason. You saw a cart catch fire before it even touched the ground. You saw a tree explode, not fall, not burn, explode, and still your feet kept moving. You didn't look back until your lungs forced you to stop, and when you did, you wished you hadn't. The village you knew, the one made of clay and sweat and hope, was gone. Just gone. In its place was orange and black, a horizon of ruin. You couldn't hear screams anymore. You hoped that meant they'd ended before the fire reached them. But you doubted it. When the fire passed, it left behind more than ruin. It left heat. Not the burning kind. The lingering kind. The kind that settles into stone and refuses to leave. You walked through ash that stuck to your skin, your breath, your thoughts. Every step stirred memories too hot to touch. There was no water, not to drink, not to fight with. The well had boiled dry, the river choked with soot. You tried to rinse your hands and only spread blackness across your palms. You didn't cry. There were no tears left, just a strange, dry ache behind your eyes. The animals were gone. The fields were cinders. The olive trees, those same ones that had once shaded generations, stood like skeletons, their bark peeled away, their roots smoldering. And yet, people gathered, because where else would they go? They walked through the ruin like mourners at a funeral with no body. They spoke quietly, when they spoke at all. They touched walls that had once held families. They picked through rubble for keepsakes, a clay pendant, a bronze ring, a cracked bowl that still smelled like honey. You helped bury what could be buried, not just bodies, dreams, dowries, tools, letters, names written in soot. One night, someone lit a small fire in a circle of stones, not for warmth, but for ritual, to remember. You sat beside it and watched sparks rise into the black sky, wondering how many prayers died that same way. And slowly, painfully, people began to rebuild, not with optimism, not with confidence, but with muscle memory. A wall here, a roof patch there, a fence made of broken furniture. You used what the fire hadn't stolen. You told stories around new fires, about the old village, about the ones who didn't make it. You tried not to make them sound heroic. They weren't. They were just people. And that was enough. Someone asked if the gods had caused it. You said no. Someone asked if they had tried to stop it. You didn't answer. Some things burned too fast for gods to notice. You didn't trust the wind anymore, or the smell of smoke. Even cooking fires made you nervous. Every crackle held a warning. Every warmth felt like a question. But you stayed. Because ash is not the end. Because memory clings to ruins. Because starting again is what you do. It started with a cough, not yours, someone else's, light. Harmless, the kind that normally faded with water or rest. But this time, it lingered. It grew deeper. It spread. You heard it in the market first, then in the fields, then echoing from house to house like a song no one wanted to hum. At first, people pretended it was nothing, a passing chill, bad air, dust from the roads. But behind every dismissive nod was a flicker of fear, because you knew what it could mean. You'd seen it before, or at least heard the stories. Illness that wore no face but took every name, no wound, no warning, just a cough. And then silence. When the first person died, the priests performed rituals, burned incense, chanted to Asclepius and Apollo. But the smoke didn't stop the fever. The prayers didn't cool the skin. The chants didn't halt the shaking. And the dead kept coming. Each day brought another pale face, another covered body, another funeral without time for grief. You stopped touching people, stopped shaking hands, stopped hugging. The village became a place of eyes only. No mouths, no breath, no trust. The well became lonely. Each person waited until no one else was around. Even the water seemed scared. Food went untraded. Doors stayed shut. Children were told to be silent and still. Laughter disappeared. You wrapped cloth around your mouth and hoped it was enough. You burned herbs, you boiled wine, you sprinkled salt in corners. Anything to feel like you were doing something. But the cough didn't care. It lived in the air, in the walls, in the space between words. It waited for you to blink. You watched your neighbor die on the 5th day. A healthy man, a strong man. His wife never came out after that. Your sister disappeared 2 days later. You didn't ask where she went, because asking meant hope, and there wasn't room for that anymore. You began measuring time by coughs. Not sunrises, not prayers, just coughs. One day, you walked past a house with the door open. That alone was strange. No one left doors open anymore, not with sickness in the air. You paused, called out. No answer. You stepped inside. The silence was thick. You found them all there. The mother, still holding the youngest. The father on the floor, eyes open. Not in fear, but in confusion, as if even in death he didn't understand what had happened. You covered your mouth and stepped back. Your breath shook, your fingers trembled. You left the door open behind you. They wouldn't be the last. Soon you saw carts filled not with grain, but with the dead. Dragged to the edge of the village, covered in cloth, marked only with stones. There were no more proper funerals. No one wanted to sing songs that might carry droplets. Even priests began to whisper their prayers from a distance. The gods felt far away. You stopped asking for mercy and started asking for delay. Just one more day. Just one more breath. People began to mark their own doors, not with wreaths or symbols, but with scratches. 3 lines if someone inside was sick, 1 if they had already died. You watched as more and more homes grew their marks. You wondered what mark you would wear. Eventually it came to your home, your brother first, then your aunt. You watched them sweat and gasp. You brought them water and burned everything they touched. You lit fires, you begged, you didn't get sick, you didn't feel lucky, you felt cursed, alone in the silence they left behind. And when it passed, if you can call it that, it didn't feel like victory, just emptiness. Fewer footsteps, fewer voices, fewer reasons to open your eyes in the morning. You didn't celebrate surviving. No one did. Because survival didn't mean untouched. It meant haunted. It meant every breath reminded you of the ones who never got to take theirs. Winter didn't arrive all at once. It crept in. First came the silence, birds leaving, wind settling, the last leaf hanging limp from the fig tree. Then came the stillness of the soil, ground too hard to dig, too stubborn for seed. Finally, the chill. At first in the mornings, then all day, then all night. You wrapped yourself in layers of linen and wool, worn, mended, thin in all the worst places. You slept with others, shoulder to shoulder, chasing warmth like it was something you could trap. It never worked. The cold found you, in your toes, in your teeth, in the spaces behind your eyes. The hearth was your only hope, but wood was low and no one dared chop the old trees. So you burned scraps, furniture, broken tools, fence posts. One man burned a carved statue from his grandmother's altar. He cried the whole time. Food grew fewer. Bread turned thin. Stews became more water than substance. You chewed slowly, not out of politeness, but to fool your stomach. Hunger changed people. Neighbors stopped knocking. Children stopped laughing. Silence became the most common language. Some nights you heard howling, not wolves, people, sick with fever, or grief, or both. You stopped asking which. You tried to keep the fire alive, but it mocked you, glowing just enough to remind you of what warmth used to feel like. Your hands cracked. Your lips bled. You tucked your knees to your chest at night and tried not to dream, because even dreams could be cruel, offering memories of spring you might not see again. You lost weight. You lost track of days. You lost words. Sometimes your tongue felt too heavy to lift. One morning, you woke and someone beside you didn't. No scream, no panic, just a quiet covering of a face, a shared glance, a longer silence. You didn't cry. Tears froze too fast to matter. The sun still rose each day, but it felt like a lie. There was no heat in it, just light, cold and uncaring. You learned to count time by the weight of your breath. When it became smoke in the morning air, you knew the frost had returned. When your fingers no longer stung but simply stopped feeling, you knew the cold had sunk deeper, into the walls, into your skin, into your thoughts. You stopped using spoons. The metal was too cruel. You drank from clay bowls held close to your chest, hoping the steam would reach your nose before it vanished. Sometimes you thought you saw firelight flickering beyond the trees. You wanted to believe it was another village, a hearth still burning, a friend. But you never followed it, because you also knew what cold did to the mind. It made you see things, hear things, hope for things, and hope was dangerous. You slept more, not because you were tired, but because sleeping meant not shivering. Sleep meant silence, until sleep itself became a danger, its warmth seductive, its peace final. You'd seen it. The boy who curled up too tightly and never woke. The old man who smiled in his sleep, finally warm, finally still. You feared sleep almost as much as hunger, but hunger could be pushed, bargained with, cheated. You ate roots that tasted like dirt, scraps too bitter for dogs. You told yourself it was enough. You lied kindly. The wind scraped your home like a dull knife. Every board creaked with the pressure. You listened to it at night, wondering which crack would be the last, wondering if the cold would collapse the roof or simply slip through every seam until it claimed you gently. You spoke less. Words used breath. Breath was heat. Silence was survival. And still, somehow, you endured. One morning, the air changed. Slightly. You didn't believe it at first, but the wind no longer bit as deep. The ground no longer echoed underfoot. A trickle of meltwater crept from the eaves. It wasn't spring, but it wasn't death either. You stepped outside, blinked into the gray light, and for the first time in weeks felt your breath return to you without pain. You weren't safe. You weren't healed. But you were alive, and that was enough for now. It was the first truly warm morning, not just less cold, warm, the kind that coaxed birds from hiding, that softened the ground beneath your feet. You stepped outside and didn't feel your breath return as steam. The air held a gentleness that felt foreign, suspicious, but you wanted to believe it. The village stirred, not with urgency, but with ease. Someone laughed, not a bitter laugh, but a real one. You couldn't remember the last time that sound had passed through your ears. You ate without rationing. Bread, actual bread, with crust and weight. There was enough for seconds. Someone opened a jar of olives they had hidden all winter. You closed your eyes and let the salt remind you that flavor still existed. Children played near the well. Chickens wandered too far from their pens. The goats kicked stones as if they hadn't seen death in months. The quiet was peaceful, but also wrong. You didn't trust it. After so many seasons of fear, peace felt like a trap, like something waiting to be shattered. You glanced at the sky, expecting clouds. You listened for coughs, for the sound of hooves, for fire. Nothing came. You helped repair a fence. You held a baby. You spoke a sentence longer than 3 words. And yet, under it all, a knot remained in your chest. Something unspoken. Something that didn't believe safety was real. That night, you couldn't sleep. Not because of fear, but because of calm. Your body didn't know what to do with silence. You trained yourself to wake at every crack, every cough, every gust of wind. Now, with nothing threatening, Your mind invented dangers just to feel normal. You stared at the ceiling and waited. For what? You weren't sure. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. You awoke to bird song. Not a warning. Not screams. Just birds. Chirping. Careless. Alive. You stepped outside barefoot. The dirt was damp but not frozen. The wind brushed your face without teeth. Someone had started a fire not for warmth but for cooking. The smell of onions and herbs rose with the morning smoke. And yet, you waited. You waited for the catch, for the hoofbeats of invaders, for the cough behind you, for the shaking ground or cracking trees. But nothing came, just footsteps, familiar ones, the voice of a neighbor greeting you by name, the thump of children's heels on the packed earth. So you breathed, really breathed. You didn't cry. Not yet. That would come later. But you allowed your shoulders to lower. Just a little. You spent the day doing ordinary things with extraordinary reverence. You scrubbed pots until they shone. You untangled rope. You helped carry stones to rebuild the grain shed. You sang while doing it, quietly, but enough. And for the first time in what felt like lifetimes, the song didn't feel like defiance. It felt like gratitude. You sat by the fire that night and stared into it, not with suspicion, but with memory. You thought of every name you couldn't speak aloud, every face the seasons took. You etched them into the flames with your silence, and still, you stayed. Because survival wasn't about strength. It wasn't about being untouched. It was about showing up, again and again, even when the sky turned cruel, even when the water lied, even when the fire raged, the wind screamed, the ground cracked, the gods stayed silent. You stayed, and somehow that was enough.